Hello, I'm Mariam Mashiri and this is the Iran War Today, our daily briefing bringing you up to date with all you need to know on the US war with Iran. Well, let's start with some of today's key developments now. 4 people are killed in an attack by the Houthis in Yemen, the first deadly attack since the start of the Iran war. Donald Trump hid in a catering truck and secretly swapped planes after he left a Nato summit over threats from Iran. And we look at why Iranian MPs want an overhaul of the way subsidised fuel is allocated in the country. Four people have reportedly been killed in an attack by the Houthis in Yemen on a small cargo ship in the Red Sea. Social media images examined by BBC Verify appear to show a damaged cargo ship in the Bab el-Mandab Strait. They are new images and they show no signs of AI generation. The pictures have also been shared by Iran's Mehr News. The Iran-backed Houthis began attacks on shipping last month after announcing a naval blockade of Saudi ports. Well, the latest attack shows how the US war with Iran is having an impact on a second shipping route in the region. Now, a lot of focus has been on the Strait of Hormuz. It is, of course, that narrow stretch of water located between Iran, the United Arab Emirates and Oman. Its effective closure since the beginning of the conflict has impacted shipping across the globe. But there is another important shipping route close by. It's next to Yemen, Eritrea and Djibouti. It's called Bab el-Mandeb. This is where the Houthis, who are backed by Iran, have targeted a cargo ship. Well, let's get more now from our Middle East correspondent, John Donison. John, how significant is this latest development?
Well, I think it's a sign that things are escalating along the coast of Yemen. This is the first time, we think, since the war between Israel, the United States and Iran started back in February, that people have been killed in a Houthi attack on ships in the Red Sea. Now, perhaps it's important to remind viewers the situation in Yemen. So Yemen is under control of the Houthis, although the internationally recognized government, who they've been in conflict with over many years now, and that's led to tens of thousands of deaths, they are in effect operating in exile, really, in Saudi Arabia. They're backed by Saudi Arabia. Now, what we've seen in the last few weeks is since the Houthis, who are backed by Iran, they announced a blockade of the Red Sea to try and increase the sort of economic pressure on, well, the United States and indeed the whole world that is already in place because of the situation in the Strait of Hormuz that you mentioned. And I think really what we're seeing now is that the Iranians are using the Houthis as another string to their bow. The Houthis in the past have carried out missile strikes on Israel itself, as well as on ships in the Red Sea. But up to now, they've largely stayed out of this wider conflict, but they are now getting more involved.
Thanks, John. We'll be back again to you shortly in Jerusalem. But now it's emerged the US president left last month's NATO summit in Turkey on a secret military flight because of a threat from Iran. That's according to new reporting from the Washington Post. Let's talk you through these pictures. This video shows the US president boarding the older Air Force One jet in Ankara as normal. But reports now say he left immediately and walked onto a catering truck that was docked at one of the doors on the far side of the aircraft. The press then boarded that aircraft. Well, the catering truck then pulls away and it goes to a different plane. The next time we saw the president was when he disembarked the old Air Force One jet in the UK after presumably being reloaded onto it after it landed. Just before he left the Ankara summit in July, Donald Trump held a news conference in which he was asked about the security threat from Iran and why he wasn't travelling on the new Air Force One. Take a listen to what he said.
I'm number one on the kill list for Iran. They're lovely people. I'm number one, so I don't know. I can't tell you that.
Why aren't you flying on the new Air Force One home?
It's flying to Europe, to one of the big bases, 2 or 3 of the big bases, where we can show it to the people. And we'll be going home by normal methods. But we have it going to Europe, to a couple of bases, actually one in particular, but it's going to go to a couple of bases, stop, so the soldiers can see it, because it's truly magnificent.
Well, let's speak to our North America editor, Sarah Smith. And Sarah, how unusual is this move by a president?
Very unusual. I've never heard of anything like this happening before. Now, obviously, in order to keep the president safe, the Secret Service do have to sometimes use some kind of subterfuge. So, for instance, when he's travelling on Marine One, the helicopter the president frequently uses, there are usually 3 of them in the air at any one time so that nobody knows which one the president's on board of. Similarly, when you have a great big motorcade of vehicles, you're never absolutely sure which one the president's in. But this kind of subterfuge around Air Force One, where they had told everybody he was on board, but actually he'd been smuggled off the plane, seems to be highly unusual because he was seen boarding the plane, as you saw there. The press were on the back of the plane. There were some White House staff still on the plane. So when Air Force One took off, it was being used as a decoy or a target, if you like. Everybody on board was under threat, presumably from that threat from Iran, whereas the president was on the smaller military aircraft that nobody knew about. But yet when he got to Mildenhall in Suffolk, when they were refueling the plane, he was snuck back onto Air Force One so that he could come down the steps looking as though he'd travelled on it. It's quite a lot of effort to go to convince everybody that the president had been on board, even after he landed in the UK and was safe.
And let's take a look at why all this subterfuge. Do we know any details about the threat or the perceived threat?
No, only that it was described as a credible threat. Now, I mean, there are a couple of things here. We know that President Trump, there's been a threat against his life from Iran for many years, actually. Since towards the end of his first term in office, he ordered the assassination of a top Iranian general. And after that, there are people there who have pledged that they will try to kill him, along with several other people who were involved in that decision in his administration. And then obviously there is the current conflict with Iran that he began a few months ago, which is ongoing. And although things have calmed down in terms of that conflict, obviously there are people involved with that who would like to take action against President Trump himself. So there is an elevated threat against him. But it's clear that the Secret Service must have learned something specific about what was happening as he was flying out of Turkey, a country that borders Iran, of course, that made them go to these extraordinary measures that they thought were necessary to keep the president secure.
Sarah, thank you. Well, another key aspect of the US war with Iran is the conflict in Lebanon, despite an ongoing truce in the war between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah. Well, the Lebanese Health Ministry says Israeli twin strikes on southern Lebanon have wounded 2 people and damaged an ambulance. Well, let's return to Jerusalem and speak to our Middle East correspondent, John Donison. And what more do we know about this, John?
Well, the Israeli military hasn't specifically commented on this incident. What Lebanese health officials are saying is this was what is known as a double tap strike. So there was an initial Israeli strike which caused casualties, and then as ambulance workers and journalists and etc. head to the scene, another strike. We believe that's when these people were injured and the ambulance was damaged. Now, it's not the first time that ambulance workers have been casualties in Israeli strikes. In the past, Israel has denied deliberately targeting health workers, but has also cast a little shade over the situation, saying that some of the ambulance services operating in southern Lebanon are affiliated with Hezbollah, and that is indeed the case. I think what's important, though, as we were talking on the programme yesterday, is the situation in southern Lebanon is all tied into the broader effort to get some sort of deal between Iran and the United States, because Iran has insisted that a ceasefire in southern Lebanon must be part of a broader deal. They want Israeli troops to pull out of southern Lebanon, as do Hezbollah, which of course is backed by Iran, and Israel, for its part, has adamantly refused to do so. So when we have incidents like this, there is a danger that it could have an impact on the prospect of getting that broader deal, which we are struggling to get between Iran and the United States.
John, thank you. Well, inside Iran, there's been a lot of discussion on petrol prices. A few days ago, Iranian MPs warned the government against any further petrol price rises, calling instead for an overhaul of the way subsidised fuel is allocated. It appears the government have listened. Well, with me is Baron Abbasi from BBC Persian. Why, Baron, is there concern about the price of fuel?
So there has been concern that the price of fuel could increase again. Fuel prices are a very sensitive issues politically and economically, and the government is caught between two difficult choices. Consumption is very high in Iran. It reportedly exceeds 135 million liters a day, and there's a gap between consumption and supply. The government cannot keep up with producing enough fuel to provide to the drivers. There are a lot of cars on the road, so and they're not very efficient. Public transportation is poor, so people are using their own cars to get around. And traditionally, fuel prices have been kept very low through subsidies. And there's also a tiered system, so there is not one single price of fuel. Every month, drivers get a monthly allowance of very cheap subsidized fuel, but if they want more fuel, then they have to buy more expensive fuel. And last year, the government introduced a third tier, so additional fuel would be even more expensive. But MPs are saying that it didn't really work. So the consumption remains very high. And there's also the problem of smuggling, because neighboring countries, fuel in those countries is much more expensive, so fuel is smuggled to those countries. So the government has to find some alternative way to basically bridge that gap between consumption and production without putting further pressure on consumers. And there's also the memory of 2019. The government sharply increased the price of fuel, and it led to nationwide protests, which, according to Amnesty International, left over 300 people dead in government crackdown, although unofficial figures are much higher. So the government knows that increasing fuel prices could have consequences far beyond the economy, could trigger public anger, and the people are already suffering. And the war has made the situation even worse because of the damage to infrastructure and disruption to supply. So it's much more difficult for the government to manage that imbalance between production and consumption.
Behram, thank you. Whether you're joining us on YouTube, TikTok, Sounds, radio or TV, thank you for your time. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the Iran War Today.